Good evening, everyone. Dearly loved friends, my name is Bijan Samali. I'm not the MC, but I'm going to introduce them. On behalf of the Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Hills Shire, I'd like to extend to all of you, dear ones, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us in celebrating the 200th anniversary of the birth of the Báb. Báb means the gate, who was the herald of the Baha'i Faith and foretold of the coming of Baha'u'llah, who is the founder of the Baha'i Faith. I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this function is happening, Durak people, who are the traditional owners and custodians of this land, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. And Mr. Christopher Heggie, who is a member of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of Australia, which is the national governing body of the Baha'i Faith in Australia. I'd like to now invite our MCs to come forward for the proceedings, and I'd like to welcome them officially.
It's my pleasure now to introduce Out of the Ashes. And this is a showcase of the life and the revelation of the Báb, written and directed by Mr. Shahram Khozai. Thank you.
Mom, who is the Báb?
Well, the Báb was a divine messenger. You can think of him as a spiritual teacher and moral guide. He was born in 1819 in Persia, at a time of religious oppression and fanaticism.
What do you mean, oppressed and fanatical?
A combination of cruelty and corruption with the clergy and government make it very dangerous and difficult for the Báb to reveal his mission and claim that he was a divine messenger. Besides, for 1,000 years, people have been waiting for the hidden Imam to appear.
So how did he reveal his mission?
Some very pure-hearted and knowledgeable people realized the time of his appearance was approaching and started awakening people and preparing them for it. I will take you back in time to see.
All major religions have prophecies of a promised one, who will usher in a golden age. The Messiah, the return of Christ, the 10th Avatar, and the 12th Imam. Shia Muslims also awaited a divine messenger under a different name, the 12th Imam.
They believe that he was in a state of physical concealment. He was alive and present, but he simply could not be seen.
They imagined that this 1,000-year-old person would return to the world as an agent of God to bring peace. That he would use the sword to become a political leader and rule over the world with justice. One of the Shia Muslims who had been waiting for the 12th Imam in the years before 1844 was a religious scholar named Sheikh Ahmad. He led an independent movement of followers known as the Sheikhis in Persia and Iraq.
Sheikh Ahmad gathered around himself students and disciples to prepare the people for the appearance of the Promised One.
The growing Sheikhi movement was a direct threat to the traditional clerics. Despite being persecuted, the Sheikhis' innovative and original teachings continued to attract followers. One of these followers was a brilliant scholar named Sayyid Kazem. He succeeded Sheikh Ahmad and greatly advanced the movement in Karbala.
Prior to his passing, Sayyid Kazem urged his students to do nothing but to scatter in search of the Promised One, whose appearance was imminent.
Throughout the ages, God has sent many divine messengers: Krishna, Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad. The arrival of the Báb and his ideas of progressive revelation mark a dramatic departure from traditional Islamic teaching.
God progressively reveals truth and religion's spiritual guidance to humanity, and that guidance is given to us by teachers or prophets that appear to humankind at different moments in history, who bring teachings that build on each other, are consistent with each other, but are relevant to that time and that culture and that place in which they are given.
Persia, known today as Iran, is home to one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth and is considered one of the first great empires. When Islam swept through the region, Persia emerged as a center of the Islamic Golden Age, contributing significant culture, scholarship, and science to the world. But by the appearance of the Báb in the 19th century, Persia was in serious decline.
They were suffering from a military defeat against Russia, so they were suffering economically. Poverty was widespread. There was anarchy in parts of the country. And on the other hand, you had power-hungry religious clerics that were challenging the state's authority. And the ordinary people were sort of crushed in between these two powers.
The Báb dispatched his disciples throughout Persia and Iraq to proclaim the coming of the new revelation. The people were expecting the return of the 12th Imam, but the message delivered by him was radically different. The message they spread was that all people and all things come from the same Creator and are sacred, beautiful, and worthy of respect. It didn't matter if you were a king or a goat herder in the eyes of God. External traits such as race, gender, and nationality are not the true human reality. Instead, each of us are like mirrors reflecting the light of God's revelation. In Shiraz, the governor, Hussein Khan, called for the Báb's arrest as soon as he returned from his pilgrimage. But in Tehran, at the king's palace, the prime minister was deeply worried that the Shah would also fall under the sway of the Báb, thus diminishing his own power.
And instead, Prime Minister Al-Ghasid arranged for the Báb to be banished to the remote northwestern corners of Iran, to a place called Makul, so that this meeting would never take place.
It was hoped to isolate the Báb in this fortress and in that way to cut off the Báb from his followers.
the Báb faced a solitary imprisonment at Maku, a fort surrounded by a huge rock that blocked out the sun. There, shadowy days stretched into long, dark nights. He was denied even a basic lamp for light. Yet he used this time to reveal hundreds of thousands of verses.
So the Báb issued a call to all of his leading disciples, wherever they were in the country, to come to a place called Badasht.
The conference was attended by nearly all of the Báb's key disciples, including Tahireh and Mirza Hussein Ali, who would later play a much greater role in the movement when he became known as Baha'u'llah, the glory of God. But even they were in for a shock.
Tahireh entered the tent, unveiled.
It was absolutely shocking. It was a revolutionary act for a woman to reveal her face in the company of men.
It was considered a sin just to look at a woman's shadow, and so to look at her face was considered an abomination. And for her to appear like that shook the faith of the people who were in the room.
She was making a point that the equality of men and women was now a reality thanks to the teachings of the Báb, and we were no longer going to do things in the old manner.
The public proclamation of a new religion was grounds for a charge of heresy. So, in July of 1848, the Báb was summoned to Tabriz to stand trial before a group of hostile clerics and the crown prince of Persia. They questioned the Báb about his teachings and admonished him to recant his claims.
This was a mock trial. It was an attempt to ridicule and humiliate the Báb. The questions that were posed to him were entirely of a trivial nature.
They had objections to the Báb's answers, and it became increasingly undignified as these clerics became more and more agitated and started abusing the Báb verbally.
And then came the most important question of all, and his answer.
Whom do you claim to be? And his response was, I am the promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years invoked.
In the summer of 1850, the Prime Minister of Persia ordered that the Báb be brought to Tabriz for public execution by firing squad. There, he and his young follower Anis were suspended with ropes against a pillar. He spoke his final words to the multitude. Had you believed in me, O wayward generation, every one of you would have followed the example of this youth. The day will come when you will have recognized me. That day I shall have ceased to be with you.
Thousands of people had gathered to witness the execution of the Báb. There were people on rooftops. There were dignitaries, there were journalists, and people from every walk of life.
A firing squad of 750 soldiers from the king's army moved into position.
To show the majesty of a state and also the fear of the government, they thought that the Bábis might engage in an armed insurrection.
Aim! The order was given.
And the Báb and his companion were executed.
What happened to the followers of the Báb after he was executed?
Well, like an earthquake that shook the whole establishment, people saw changes, new teachings, a new hope, a new way of life. And it was met with a fierce opposition from the traditional clergy and a corrupted government. More than 20,000 Babis were put to death. Let's take you back in time again, this time to the office of the governor, to see how they treated Tahireh, the first woman in Persia to remove her veil.
Despite your reassurances, there is more unrest and turmoil in our lands.
Long live our Pa. Praise be to Allah. All the Baha'i leaders have either been killed or taken into our custody.
We thought if we crushed and defeated his gatherings in the north, people would leave him. We thought if we sent the Báb to Azerbaijan, people would forget him. We thought if we put him on trial, he would withdraw and recant his claims. And you thought by his execution, the Baha'i movement would be terminated forever. Well, how wrong we were. The greater our efforts to eliminate them, the stronger they have become.
You should not be worried. It's only a matter of time.
Thousands of people have already accepted his claims and his faith, and thousands more still are searching for him. Our authority continues to be undermined, and yet you are telling me now not to worry?
He was insane when he made such a huge claim.
Insane? As you may well know, we arranged a meeting in Tabriz with the Báb and our most learned scholars and our great clergy to silence his claims with reason, logic, and verses from the Holy Book.
And surely he was defeated when he ran away from that meeting.
Defeated? He, in front of our prince and all the assembly, he stood and he repeated his claim 3 times. I am the promised one. I am the one whose name for 1,000 years you have invoked. And nobody dared to say anything.
His feet were whipped for his arrogance and for leaving that assembly.
None of it is working.
Of course, none of it will work as long as you keep treating these Babis with compassion.
Compassion? I wonder if you would still have your job had the Báb met with the king.
We must be grateful to Grand Vizier, the Prime Minister, for his wisdom.
Do you know, when the Báb was examined by the English physician, Dr. Cormick, the Báb told him he had no doubt that all of Europe would come over to his faith?
This proves my point. He was insane.
Such a huge claim. And yet in Tabriz, in front of the prince, they asked him such trivial questions, which were not worthy of his station or his rank. And now we must deal with another matter, a very difficult one. Guards, bring in the prisoner. And what is your name?
My name is Qurratul Ain, Tahireh.
Well, we've heard some very disturbing news about you, and some very good news too. You have been charged for attending a gathering with Babis in Badasht. You have been charged for unveiling at that gathering. You have been charged for plotting an armed rebellion against the king's army to save the Báb. Now, I don't know what you have found in the Báb that has made you leave your husband and your children. You have crossed every line and norm and brought great shame and humiliation to your rank. Now you may answer.
What is the rank of women in your belief? I am invisible, and this expectation of invisibility is forced upon us because we are women. Yes, I walked into a room attended with hundreds of men, but this wasn't an act of rebellion. It was a symbol, tearing down century-old expectations and traditions that have prevented women from progress.
What am I hearing?
So it was that I appeared before the assembly unveiled, to move them, to move their blood, their brains, their souls.
Quiet!
Yes, I have to be quiet because I don't exist, or you don't want to acknowledge my existence. As women, we are defined by two colors, black and white. Wearing black to cry and express grief, to attend the dead and burials, and finally, wearing a white shroud when we die.
What else does a woman need?
Oh, Mullah, can't you see? Based on a hadith from Imam Sadiq, peace be upon him, by his coming, he opened the gate of science to the world, so that knowledge will flourish to its unimaginable potential, and humanity will advance to peace and prosperity. Báb's teachings invite us to find the truth by ourselves, no need for a middleman.
Tahireh, you're avoiding answering your charges.
He talks about unity between the religions of God, unity of the people, kindness to your neighbor, to your fellow man, to nature, equality of man and woman. The essence of Báb's teachings is unity, purity, change, greater knowledge, and compassion.
Enough! You should be stoned to death for such provocative remarks.
Those who are crucified, stoned, burned, have their breath wrenched out of them, they teach, they are heard. Their tragedies widen the eyes of the people and unstop their ears.
It is better to burn you and make an example out of you.
In the burning down of a candle, nothing is burned but a butterfly's feather. Yet we burn, and our flame sets the whole world alight.
Tahireh, Tahireh, listen carefully. You were born into a noble and scholarly family. I know them well, and they are all firm in their faith in God. You are young, with charm and beauty, well educated, and your fame extends beyond Persia. Your poems are read by everyone, rich and poor, royals, peasants. With these qualities, you could have the wealth of the world. I'm sure you know the king's opinion of you.
I would explain all my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet, to catch a glimpse of thee, I'm wandering like a breeze, from house to house, door to door, place to place, street to street.
He is considering you as his favorite wife. Do not ruin your chances. He has protected you so far. You'll receive a huge bounty from me and from the royal office. All you must do is denounce the Báb and his teachings. Do not block your path to the king's palace. You too could live like a queen.
When the holiness Jesus Christ was a prisoner and in the hands of his enemies, he said, I am the King of Kings. And all the feeble-minded courtiers laughed at him and put a crown of thorns on his holiness's head. They nailed him to the cross and crucified him. And indeed, he became the King of Kings. And his kingdom will exist forever in everyone's heart. And how about his enemy?
I think we're wasting our time. And you're risking your life.
Out of the ashes rises the phoenix. I am ready for that. My breath must be taken so that the words living therein shall live on forever. They shall be surprised, shall they not, that such a little breath, so small, held in here, shall leave this body and grow colossal, spreading into all lands of the world.
Tahireh, this is your last chance and my last request. Final warning. You can keep your beloved Báb in your heart. It is not my concern. But publicly, you must condemn this movement and denounce your loyalty to him.
At last, I, Tahireh, searched my heart. I looked line by line. What did I find? You and you, you and you, you and you.
Guards, come get this prisoner and await our instructions.
Tahireh, I am charging you with spreading corruption on earth, which carries the death penalty.
You can kill me as soon as you like, but you cannot stop the emancipation of women.
What happened to the Báb after his execution?
After his execution, some of the Babis managed, in the middle of the night, to rescue the body. It was kept hidden and moved from place to another place for 59 years. Baha'u'llah instructed the remains of the Báb to be brought to Haifa and to be buried there, when a beautiful shrine for him was constructed. His body is resting under a golden dome, covered with lights and visited by millions of people from all parts of the world. A testimony to his station and his mission for mankind when he, in the darkest moment of his life, said that his message of peace and prosperity will be heard and will be accepted by the people in the West too.
Okay, dear friends, I hope you enjoyed Out of the Ashes. So out of all those ashes that we had, here comes this glory. Please put your hands together. I'd like to convey our thanks and appreciation to Mr. Shahram Khuzui for writing and directing this showcase, and also Mrs. Yuko Khuzui for doing this beautiful stage for us, and of course all of those who participated in the drama and all of it. One more time, let's show our appreciation to them.
So friends, we've come to the important part of the evening where we thank those who have contributed so much to the evening. And I'd like to call up here, if we could, Councillors Rina Jetty, Frank Damasi, Alan Haselden, and Elizabeth Russell. Please.
Friends, we also would like to thank some other friends who've actually helped us for this evening. I'd like to call upon Shahram Khuzui and Yuko Khuzui also come at the front. Of course, for the lovely showcase and a beautiful stage decoration.